What up YouTube? Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified YouTube channel. My name is Salvador Brigman and today we're talking about real estate crowdfunding. So a little while ago, I wrote a book called Real Estate Crowdfunding Explained and people have been loving that book. I recently also released an Audible version and what I wanted to do with this video is to sort of give you a condensed version. I want to give for those people out there that are interested in real estate crowdfunding, specifically the investing side, a primer if you will, a way to get started that isn't so complicated, so filled with jargon. This is really for beginners, so I hope you like today's video.
And so in real estate crowdfunding, the same idea is lots of people get together and their goal is to invest in real estate. They're going to fund a real estate together, hence the name crowdfunding. Get it? The crowd is funding it. And so, you got a property that's worth, the purchase price is $100,000. The investor is trying to raise $100,000. Now, the investor could go to a bank and the bank's going to make them go through all this paperwork and appraisals and, put down a 20% down payment or whatever. Or they might not even be able to get bank financing, or for whatever reason, they don't want to go to the bank. So instead they use crowdfunding sites and they raise the money internally. So rather than giving to a bank, they let other people raise that money for them, like the crowd essentially raise the money. And so you might put in $5,000, the guy next door might put in $5,000, that guy might have put in $500, that person might put in $20,000, and then the people will earn a piece of the pie.
You can see how much your portfolio is worth, and as you can see, I have $176,916.76 invested. From there, you can scroll down and start to see the highlights, which are important things you should know about, and then below that, you can see the news feed, which will give me specific updates related to me and my properties. For example, I can see in Q3 2022, I had a dividend of $1,358.30. The next tab is the performance tab, and this is where I usually click when I first log in because, well, it's the most important, right? This is where I can see whether or not I am making money or losing money. So let me go ahead and walk you through my investment performance over time. So I made my first investment of $10,000 on November 4th of 2020. And after playing around inside of the platform, I ended up being very impressed and decided to invest another $95,000 into some other REITs. One was called a growth E-REIT, which focused on acquiring properties that will have more appreciation growth. And another one was called an income E-REIT, which focused more on properties that will have more cash flow. And so as you can see in 2020, after only 2 months, I had a weighted average return of 4.9% or $3,043.22. And that's 2 months. Okay, some investors would be happy with that return after 1 year or 12 months. So that's really freaking good. But now let's go ahead and look at 2021 because things got even better. So this was my first full year being invested. And as you can see, if I follow the chart, things were going pretty much as expected until they reported appreciation in Q3 and my portfolio exploded, going from $114,000 to $125,000. And that gave me confidence to put in another $25,000, and my total returns for 2021 alone was $29,000 with an average weighted return of 25.9%.
There's a lot of people that want to get in the game, however, and they say, Chris, if I want to do that, I got to bring credit to the table, and either my credit isn't good enough, or I don't want to max out my debt to income ratio, or for whatever reason, maybe you're too young, maybe there's you've changed jobs. Banks have a number of reasons why you can't actually use your credit. Some of you are international and you want to buy real estate in the United States, and you say, well, that may not work either. So there is a type of crowdfunding that we do inside the United States. There's a way for us to actually bring people's money together and have enough all of a sudden to actually move banks out of the game and actually buy homes cash. So first of all, this is kind of exciting because $250,000 for one person might be a lot to bring to the table, but for a group of people, they can take it down.
Meet your e-commerce partner, Fulfillrite, the high-tech turnkey solution to store, package, and ship your products worldwide. With over 100 rave reviews and a 5-star rating on Trustpilot, Google, and Shopify, it's no wonder they're called the most trusted name in order fulfillment. Wondering what all the hype's about? Get a free custom quote from Fulfillrite today. Link in the description.
Here's what I found. Now, besides a lot of legal jargon, here are the 5 things that stood out. The first one is lack of liquidity. By investing in Fundrise, you really just end up tying up your money for 5 years or potentially longer. Even though if you do want to sell, they do offer a lower redemption rate to buy back your shares. But they make it very clear that there is no guarantee they will have somebody to buy your shares. As they say in their fine print, if we do not successfully implement a liquidity transaction, you may have to hold your investment for an indefinite period. It then goes on further to say, Fundrise has the authority in its sole discretion to limit redemptions by each shareholder during any quarter, including if the manager deems such action to be in the best interest of the shareholders as a whole. Basically, they're just saying, if you want to sell early and get your money back, we'll do our best.
Now within the platform, you have the choice of investing in 2 different types of assets. You can either invest in individual offerings or you can invest in the Yield Street Prism Fund. Let's break down both of those right now. So with the individual investments, this is what I was talking about earlier, where Yield Street goes out there, buys a very expensive asset and then divides it into a bunch of small pieces where their investors can buy a small portion of. For example, here are some of the current investment offerings on the Yield Street platform. You can see we've got a mortgage loan right here. We've got some supply chain financing, another kind of loan, a real estate fund. And so there's a lot of different assets on here for investors to get started with. In general, these are going to have a minimum investment of around $10,000 in order to get started investing with. But unfortunately, the individual investments are only available to accredited investors, which means you need to make over $200,000 per year if you're single, or $300,000 per year if you are married, or if you have a net worth of over $1 million, excluding the home where you live, you could also qualify as an accredited investor. Now, the Prism Fund, on the other hand, is not exclusive to accredited investors, and you're able to invest with a much lower minimum as well. Now, basically with the Prism Fund, you're getting exposure to all of these different types of asset classes. So think things like fine art, lawsuits, real estate, and stuff of that nature. The fund itself is basically buying up these different assets, and then you investing in the fund gives you exposure to all of them. Now, to date, this fund has actually raised over $49 million, which is very, very substantial. As I mentioned, you're looking at a lower minimum here of only $1,000 to invest in the fund, and you do not have to be accredited in order to do so. The fund also pays out a quarterly distribution to investors, so it's kind of like receiving a dividend by owning this particular fund.
So I would kind of try to make this a little bit more simple, which is that there are basically a bunch of different platforms out there, and they all have their own little speciality. So in this video, we're going to be going through a couple of different decision criteria that you need to be aware of when it comes to this. But first, let's start with some of those major platforms. So if you're writing this down, you should definitely write down some platforms like Fundrise, Realty Mogul, CrowdStreet, PeerStreet, Yield Street, Equity Multiple, and there are a lot more. But those are the main ones that we want to focus on. So Fundrise, Realty Mogul, CrowdStreet, PeerStreet, Yield Street, and Equity Multiple. Now, when it comes to this, the first thing that I want to point out for you as an investor is to be aware of the type of investor that you are. And by that I mean sectioning yourself off. Are you a qualified, accredited investor? Or are you a non-accredited investor? If you've never heard those terms before, it's really just a way to kind of shield non-educated or not very sophisticated investors from taking on too much financial risk. So there's basically accredited investors and non-accredited investors. And if you are an accredited investor, you have access to certain deals that non-accredited investors don't have access to. You have access to certain platforms, certain types of funding. You have access to certain, like I said, properties, etc., that non-accredited investors are not going to be able to access. And it's really just based in the rules, right, when it comes to this system. So let's talk a little bit about what is an accredited investor, and also what are the types of things they can participate in. And if you're not an accredited investor, what are some of the things you should be aware of and some of the platforms that you want to participate in? So I'm going to read this just to get this completely accurate, right? An accredited investor is an individual or a business entity that is allowed to trade securities that may not be registered with financial authorities. Now, when a platform doesn't have to register an offering with financial authorities, it really decreases the burden when it comes to regulations, as well as the costs that go into actually doing that offering when it comes to legal costs, compliance, all of that kind of stuff. So a lot of platforms are kind of incentivized to not want to, produce a lot of these offerings when it comes to publicly traded offerings sometimes, because it's just a lot of costs related to that. So this is known as participating in a private placement. And like I said, it's usually less costly because they don't necessarily have to register this raise with the SEC. And typically they must satisfy the requirements, like I said, that are under Reg D when it comes to being an accredited investor. And this is a self-certification system. So the SEC defines an accredited investor as either, number one, An individual with gross income exceeding $200,000 each of the 2 most recent years, or joint income with a spouse or partner exceeding $300,000 for those years, within a reasonable expectation of the same income in the current year. Or number 2, a person whose individual net worth or joint net worth with that person's spouse or partner exceeds $1 million, excluding the person's primary residence. Real estate crowdfunding is disrupting the way that real estate is financed. And more than that, it allows everyday ordinary Americans to invest in real estate properties that they could not previously. Real estate crowdfunding, in my opinion, is democratizing the entire way in which investment capital flows into real estate properties. And if you want to learn more about this and also the step-by-step to actually do this, whether you are an investor or you're a sponsor being someone who's looking to raise capital for the real estate property, or an investor, someone who wants to get a return and to actually get a bite-sized property, a piece of the property, a slice of the pie, if you will, check out this link first of all for my free real estate crowdfunding course. You can go to the link at crowdcrux.com/real estate course. I will include this link in the description of the video at crowdcrux.com/real estate course. That link will take you to a free course that will get you warmed up to speed, the best practices when it comes to real estate crowdfunding. In addition, if you're ready to kind of dive in and sink your teeth into some real valuable education, some nuggets of gold when it comes to this particular industry, go and check out my book, Real Estate Crowdfunding Explained. There's now a version on Audible, which you can actually get for free if you download a free 30-day trial of Audible. You can also get a free copy of Real Estate Crowdfunding Explained. So go and check it out at crowdcrux.com/real estate audio. That link is crowdcrux, crowdcrux.com/real estate audio. Again, crowdcrux.com/real estate audio, and begin your journey today when it comes to the growing, the exploding real estate crowdfunding industry.